Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Hello, this is Ronald Kinsella, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK radio network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Hello, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for that intro, Ronald. That's very nice of you. Right, now before we get going on today's show, which is, I think it's going to be really, really interesting, I've just got a few call-outs to people. Mike Coval of Hull, East Yorkshire, UK. What have I got here? Oh yeah, Laura Plum Sayers of Burnley, Lancashire, UK, and Kelly Hollis of Liverpool, Merseyside, UK. Now today's guest, it's Jeff Mudgett. You may have seen a History Channel, on the History Channel there was about a serial killer named H.H. Holmes. Well, Jeff is H.H. Holmes' great-great-grandson. And he's been investigating the murders, and he actually found links to our Jack the Ripper, which is quite controversial in some aspects, but actually quite intriguing in the others, and the series itself is brilliant. Okay, I think what I'll do, I think the best thing to do is now introduce Jeff and let him fill us in on his story. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, David. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, I'm so pleased. You know, I've been trying to get you onto the show for a while now, and I'm so pleased to get you on at last, and welcome to it. And it's fantastic to have you on, and thank you for finding the time.
Well, what made you interested in my story?
Oh, well, I've always been interested in, I think everyone's interested in Jack the Ripper, but when I saw your series on the History Channel, which, by the way, I've just I've been watching again today.
I haven't watched it in quite a while. They actually don't show it anymore here in the States. They've got certain legalities involved, is my guess. But they do replay it in the UK, I guess. So
yeah.
Well, I still am quite grateful to history that they gave me the chance to tell my story, my theory about Holmes and Jack the Ripper, which, when you think of it, was quite amazing on their part. And they spent a lot of money doing it, especially when a lot of people around the world think I'm quite crazy. So it was it's something I'm still very grateful to them for.
Sure, yeah. I guess you've been recently doing some paranormal investigations into your great-great-grandfather. Before we get into that, I think we ought to kind of go into the background of how you found out about him and your investigations, and maybe a bit about the series. Could you sort of set us off on that path?
Yeah, sure. When I was, let's just start at the beginning, David. When I was about 40 years old, my grandfather revealed this horrible secret that he carried with him his entire life, even from my grandmother, that his grandfather was perhaps the most complex character in American history, H.H. Holmes, this serial killer who had constructed a hotel in Chicago that has come to be known as the Murder Castle during the World's Fair. And so you can imagine my surprise, my shock to finally learn my origin, especially when my grandmother had, for the past 20 years, told story after story about how we were related to the Civil War General Robert E. Lee, in going so far as to make my middle name Lee, actually. So this was a shocking development, which, quite frankly, I knew I had to do something with rather than just nod my head as the other members of the family were doing that night at dinner. So I set aside my career in law in California and decided to research what was legend, what was lore about this character. And lo and behold, David, came to find out that much of the story had been incorrectly recorded by history.
I see.
And decided to put years of time into writing my own book, Bloodstains, and then being involved in shows like yours or television series like History Channel's American Ripper, so that maybe we could one day determine the truth about this horrible man, and maybe learn something from that knowledge, maybe be able to predict when this was going to happen again, and maybe prevent it from doing so.
Certainly, yeah. Did you feel it like a millstone around your neck when you first found out that you had a distant relative who was one of the most famous serial killers in American history?
Oh yeah, there was a huge stigma for my family. As a matter of fact, after his alleged execution, the entire family moved from the East Coast of the United States to California to get away from that burden, and had quite frankly done well in California. But when my grandfather revealed the story to me, I had been, David, my career at law was largely investigating mysteries, determining facts, and then alleviating a client, a defendant, from guilt and going to prison. That's what I was good at. And all of a sudden, my entire life was now faced with this mystery about this horrible man, and who was I was the direct descendant of. This is my grandfather's grandfather. So I set everything aside and did the research, to the extent that much of my family refused to talk to me for years, David.
Oh dear.
They wanted it left alone. They wanted it lie down in the dirt and them to move on with their lives. Well, that wasn't me, and as you can see, millions of people have now heard about my theories that not only was Holmes this horrible man, but that he was also Jack the Ripper.
Well, I have got your book on Kindle actually, but I do need to get a hard copy of it, because I've actually been sort of going through it, and it's a fantastic story. The way it reads, and I think the way you put it together is fantastic. But obviously, you're just telling the story as it is anyway. So when you set off on this, did the History Channel contact you, or about it, or how did that happen?
You know who contacted me, David? And it's it's a great honor that they did. But I was contacted by TED Talks, and they asked me to give a presentation in front of a crowd up in Vancouver, Canada, about the show that day was about bias and preconceived notions. And they wanted my story, my theory about Holmes being Jack the Ripper to be the basis for that day's discussion, because obviously, as you know, being English, when a new theory arises about who was Jack the Ripper, there are millions and millions of doubters who come out before they even consider the facts or the possibility that the theory may be true.
Yeah. I bet it's kind of like, it's our serial killer, you can't have him. That's type of mentality.
We could go on for hours here today, David, with some of the names I've been called regarding my theory. But so when I gave the TED Talk, I was contacted by the largest paranormal radio station here in the States, Coast to Coast, with George Norrie.
Yeah.
Went on with him late one night, and History was listening. Well, they contacted me and said they were interested in putting together a mini-series called American Ripper about my theory that this American doctor was the real Jack the Ripper, and would I be interested in helping them produce this? Well, as you can imagine, I jumped right in.
Absolutely,
And I think, you know, one of the things when I look back at the series, David, it's been 2-3 years now. But I think some of the historical recreations of Whitechapel and London and the killings themselves are some of the best ever produced in television.
Oh, you're right. The way it's put, it does actually put a lot of the history of Holmes and also Jack the Ripper together, and I think it's great the way it's been done.
Well, and then the actor that history obtained to be Jack the Ripper in the series, I think did an excellent job.
Yeah, he's very chilling, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh, he's horrific. But he's very elegant, he's very charming, he's very intelligent. He was the things that Holmes was known for.
Yeah, because so how did Amaryllis Fox get involved? You didn't know her obviously before that. Did History Channel put you on, you know, with her, or?
Oh, I love that you bring her up. She's one of my best friends now. Amaryllis Fox was my co-host on the show. She is probably the most amazing female, if not just straight human being I've ever met in my life. And she's this energetic, athletic, brilliant human being that had a career undercover in the CIA before she decided to get into television, which she's now written a book that's out now in print called Her Life Undercover in the CIA.
Oh, right. Oh, excellent.
And she actually, there's scenes in it, David, you wouldn't believe. There's scenes in it where she's carrying her baby and discussing atomic weapons with ISIS. Oh. And it's something, if your fans just need to read, I can only tell you this. And then after our series, she went on to marry Robert Kennedy III, one of the Kennedy boys.
Oh, right. I didn't know
so
that. That's news to me. Yeah.
I'll give you a great story about Amaryllis, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
While we were exhuming the alleged grave of H.H. Holmes at the end of the series, we got to the end of the grave. We found the fake coffin. Holmes had actually bought 2 plots. One was a fake pine box, empty, which, as you can imagine, shocked the whole film crew, the director, the producers, history, everyone.
Sure, yeah.
Amaryllis, while we were all deciding that was enough, we were done with this, Amaryllis talked history into moving to the next plot and going deeper, which, when we did, we found the concrete sarcophagus that the legend had that Holmes had been buried in. While the scientists from the University of Pennsylvania opened this concrete grave up, it was too heavy for us to lift out of the grave. We found the body, we found the skull, still mustache attached, still his coat on. And as you can imagine, the smell, I can still remember it now, was the most horrific odor I've ever known in my entire life. Well, the 2 scientists, they were used to archaeology and anthropology. They're down in the grave digging away, and I'm looking over the side, and the director's yelling, Mudgett, get down in the grave, help them dig this up for us. We want this on television. And I said, I'm not going down there. I'm not going down there at all. It smells too terrible for me. Plus, it's scary. And then Amaryllis says, I'll go. And the next thing I know, David, she's jumped down into the grave and she's digging away with the scientist. And that's pretty much who Amaryllis is.
That's the type of girl she is. Yeah, I can see. I mean, she seems the type that you don't sort of mess around with anyway. That's, you know, she'll soon tell you where to get off type of thing. But, yeah, I think you made a good pair actually. I can imagine like a thriller series, I don't know, Mudgett and the Fox or something, because that's kind of how you came across.
Well, thank you very much. I actually think she was the star of the show, so it worked out well.
Well, I think you made a good team. I mean, the whole series. Really, if anyone's not seen it out there, I really would advise to see it. You know, if you've got any interest in Jack the Ripper and serial killers, etc., because it's probably one of the best I've seen, anyway, in my opinion. But Anyway, recently, I definitely want to go into more about H.H. Holmes, because he was actually quite a con man, wasn't he? He conned his way across the US in various cities, but mainly in Chicago. With
I think you've hit it on the nail on the head. He was perhaps the greatest fraud that's ever lived in the United States of America. And, many of the newspapers, characterized him as that during his trial in the 1890s for murder. But, what I was fascinated with, David, was how this man who, went to the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor Medical School, had his degree, was one of the highest IQs ever recorded there. How a man that could have been a Louis Pasteur had he wanted to, decided to change his life into being the real Dr. Frankenstein in America. And that fascinated me, not only because, that was my, my ancestor and my origin, but also so much so that maybe, like I said before, we could determine why a brilliant human mind like that would have gone off on that track when he wasn't crazy. He wasn't mentally ill. This was something we need to learn more about. And I think what's happening, David, now is my book's becoming quite a success. We're reaching 30,000 copies sold here in the United States, and that's all without any advertising. We sell ebooks in the UK. I don't have the ability to sell print copies there yet, but one day we will. And these stories about Holmes, many of the networks are interested in creating new stories. There's a major motion picture coming out about him.
Oh, really? That's good.
I think the world's going to find out who this complex character was, and I'm pretty much sitting back watching it happen, but I'm excited to find out what conclusions are reached about something that we have mischaracterized for over 100 years. This wasn't just a psychopathic serial killer. This was something far more complex than that. And I think we're going to find out what it was, and I think it's going to change the way we look at human beings and how we think, our mental abilities, how we characterize, questions, and how something which, and when we talk about serial killers, David, I go on a lot of shows, and serial killing is obviously one of the there are millions and millions of Americans who are interested in anything about serial killers. The Gacy's, the Bundys, the sick human beings that, they grew up from 2 or 3 years old with problems mentally.
I think the scariest thing is that there are still some out there now that we don't even know about yet. Yeah, and this is not Holmes. This was a man who had a choice. This was a man who made choices about it. And I want to know what would make a human being choose that evil side instead of being this amazing character who could have been one of the heroes of society had he wanted. Yeah. In some ways, he's more of an enigmatic character than Jack the Ripper, isn't he? Because he's known to have done all these murders. It could be up to about 200, and I think it was only done for a lot less than that. But I think it was 27 he was actually accused of, wasn't it? But I think they only booked him for about 7. Was it, Jeff?
Oh, David, I have no idea how many he actually murdered. And I get asked this question a lot. And the problem is, having practiced criminal law in California, I can tell you this. Holmes was an expert at forensic science. He was an expert at murder scene science. He knew exactly how to remove evidence of homicide before the police showed up at a scene. He even created basements at his hotel where he had acid baths, furnace that reached 6,000 degrees to cremate bodies. He knew how to eliminate anything that could establish proof that he killed an innocent victim. So when people, he had glass factories, David, he had a glass factory in Chicago, okay? He had a cement factory along the river in Chicago that created blocks of concrete, but never sold concrete to contractors.
No, that's right. I remember seeing that in the series. Put all this cement in, but nothing ever went anywhere.
Well, that's right. And so now we have a man that's known to have committed murders. We have a man that made coffin-sized concrete blocks and dumped them in a river. We have a man that had a glass factory that could reach tremendous temperatures that was in essence a crematorium. So when I go on shows like yours and people ask me, how many did Holmes murder? I have no idea, Dave.
Yeah, you can only surmise, can't you? But I did see a figure of around about 200, but I think that was on Wikipedia or something. But obviously that's just a guess anyway. Without any names linked to them, how do you know? But he was also a bigamist, wasn't he? He had his wife, but then he went on and married two more ladies or women that didn't know anything about each other.
He was quite the charmer, had multiple wives, only one legal wife, which came back to haunt him at his murder trial because the judge allowed one of his quote-unquote wives to testify against him, where had he divorced his first wife, this next wife wouldn't have been allowed to testify against him. So that came back to haunt him. But as far as mistresses, he had many, many mistresses. He was the one that could walk into a party, David, and literally charm the socks off the most beautiful woman at the place.
Yeah, like charisma.
He was an elegant, dapper dresser who carried himself well, who had 2 or 3 different languages he was fluent in. He was quite the charmer.
And a lot of it was all to do with money, wasn't it? I think it was his third wife was, she had quite a bit of money, didn't she? And, I'm not sure about the other 2, but,
well, there was 2 things H.H. Holmes was interested in, David, money and women. And when a woman got in his way of obtaining more money, lo and behold, she disappeared.
Yeah. Because I mean, building that hotel, which was actually became the castle, that must have cost an awful lot of money back then. And obviously he must have had money to do that, and also to convert it the way he did into like all the mazes and all different rooms and because he had all sorts of different traps and things, didn't he? It'd make a fantastic movie to if you put it all together with all the dungeons and the traps and whatever. As I say, it must have cost quite a bit of money, and obviously they did all that through lots of conning people, basically, wasn't it? Insurance fraud and everything like that.
It was a complex structure. The first floor was his small little businesses. He had a pharmacy. He sold prescription drugs. Printing shop. He had a copier room that he could print out his documents, his books, anything he wanted. His second floor was the hotel. There was 20 rooms in it that he could rent out to boarders, which were targeted as the ones visiting the World's Fair that needed a place to stay. He actually bought this piece of property, David. It was about 2 miles down the road from the World's Fair, which had almost 20 million visitors, okay, and as many as 200,000 a day. And you had some of the greatest scientists of all time there. You had Einstein, you had Tesla, you had the Wright brothers there. It was an amazing collection of knowledge and innocents from all over the world who needed a place to stay. And the murder castle was right down the trolley line from the fair, so they could come down the trolley, disembark the train, and stay at the murder castle. They didn't call it the murder castle. No. And then his third floor was his living accommodations, which were quite interesting, quite complex. We have a Hollywood artist now. She's actually putting together a scale model which comes off the levels of the murder castle itself, including the horrific basement where all the torture and experimentation took place. And I think one of the networks is going to be showing that model on television here pretty soon.
That sounds amazing. So when he was travelling around, he actually had an accomplice, didn't he, or a couple of accomplices? One of the accomplices he thought was his best friend, but he ended up murdering him, didn't he? and I think they do an insurance fraud. He got him to sign an insurance form type of thing, and then he claimed on it after killing him.
No, you're exactly right. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the Holmes character, David, is how supposedly innocent people, knowing who and what he was, would take up a partnership with him and actually, for the first time in their lives, involve themselves in homicide and horrible crime. And not to the extent of just murder, but actual torture, actually stripping flesh from a body and then selling the skeleton to medical schools for cash. Things like that, like a Quasimodo type partner. And that's always been one of the things that has fascinated me the most. I'll tell you another story that maybe illustrates this side of him. At the trial, when the jury came back with a finding of guilty, the courtroom was full of press from all over the country. The line behind Holmes was 5 or 6 young ladies. And as they led Holmes away in shackles to the prison, these women stood up, and this is all press accounts. These women stood up with these crocodile tears rolling down their eyes, standing next to each other, so they all knew that they were really pretty much the same thing. They had been mistresses of this horrible man, but seeing him let off was an emotional distress to them, which I still find fascinating to this day.
I suppose getting into the paranormal side now, you used to have dreams, didn't you? Or do you still have dreams? So he come to you in your dreams and spoke to you?
When my grandfather revealed my origins, David, and this was quite unusual, and I've been to many, many neurologists about this, I developed what they diagnosed as epilepsy, which at 40 years old is quite unusual. Most epileptics are born with the illness or develop it at a fairly young age.
I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. It's not pleasant, is it? Is it controlled? It must be controlled, is it?
Oh, the medicine works well for me.
Good.
So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
So, but I developed seizures after my grandfather revealed the secret, and during these seizures, David, I would be visited by Holmes. And I wrote about this in my book Bloodstains, all right? And I went to these neurologists explaining to them my seizures, and they wrote them off as normal. They wrote them off as seizures with a content created by the mystery that was controlling my life. Who was this horrible man that had been my great-great-grandfather? Well, okay, I accepted that, but then I started having seizures and then recording what had been revealed during them to me by him. And David, the facts that came up were things I had no knowledge of whatsoever and had turned out to be true. So you can tell that part of it fascinated me. And I couldn't get any neurologist, my finest in the world, to agree with me that there was something more to this than just me having a bad dream. And so I tried. It came to fruition that I wanted to write a book about that journey that I was on regarding this secret being told, and then these visits from this man during, my illnesses. And that's what Bloodstains is all about, and that's where I came up with my theory, David, that he was Jack the Ripper.
You obviously still strongly feel that he could well be Jack the Ripper, because it was kind of left a bit unsure. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that suggests it, but I think it's quite compelling myself. But there's just that little bit missing, isn't there?
Well, if you and your listeners don't mind, I'll tell you right now, I'm convinced the mystery is solved. It's over with. We just have too many people that won't look at my theory with an open mind. But I'll tell you this. When we were in production for American Ripper in London, I was visited in the hotel lobby by two Scotland Yard agents who admitted to me that they were fascinated with my theory, as they are in many theories about who Jack the Ripper was. But that for decades, they'd long believed that there had been a copycat involved, all right? That it hadn't been one man that had murdered the five. And these were two Scotland Yard agents that told me this face to face. They also told me that they agreed with me that the Dear Boss letter had not been a journalistic hoax, that it had been written by a highly educated American, an American trying to sound English, and probably a doctor. Well, now, so now we're starting to fit an MO pretty precisely. They also agreed with the two linguists that we had on American Ripper, probably the two finest linguists in the UK, who stated, in their professional opinion, Dear Boss was written by an American trying to sound English. When I ran the Dear Boss letter with Holmes' correspondence through the University of Buffalo computer program, it's called the Cedar Fox, and it's what the FBI here in the country uses for their criminology, all right, regarding handwriting analysis. That came back 97%.
That's high. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, and when I told Scotland Yard about that 97% number, they'd never seen this. When I told them about that, they were fascinated about that. Now, they've never gotten back to me about that computer program, the conclusion it reached. And one day I'd love to meet those two agents again one day in another hotel lobby in London to hear what they finally come up with. But, as I said earlier, I have no doubt Holmes wrote the Dear Boss letter and he murdered Catherine Eddowes. As far as the other victims known as the Ripper Five, I have no idea about Mary Kelly or Annie Chapman, any of those. But I know Holmes murdered Catherine Eddowes.
Right. I know those dates fit pretty well, don't they?
They fit. We have passenger lists on cruise ships going from the States to London. Amaryllis did that research. It's interesting. During American Ripper, the producers wanted me to do that research on the passenger list. And I said, no. There's already too many doubters in the world about my theory about this. Let's have Amaryllis do it. When we started the show, David, Amaryllis came up to me and she said, listen, I enjoy this show. I enjoy being a co-host, but I want you to know, I don't believe your theory at all.
Oh, really? She said that to you?
This was an ex-CIA agent, okay? And I said, okay. I said, but do me a favor. Check the evidence as it comes in, check the facts, and see what you come up with. When the show ended, David, Amaryllis came back to me and said, you know what, Jeff? I believe you now.
Yeah.
So that's when we came up with these passenger lists on these ships. I told history, no, I'm not going to do that research. Have Amaryllis do it. I want the world to accept what she finds because they're going to believe she's unbiased about this.
Sure, yeah.
And I think it's taught that way in the television show.
I think it's the best way to go into the investigation anyway, to be skeptical about it, because that way, when you do start to get swayed, then it sort of really proves a lot to you, doesn't it? But, I guess people should start to look at the paranormal side. You've been doing a lot of paranormal investigations into it now. You've been on the Ghost Adventures with Zach. How did that all go?
When Zach called me and asked me to come on the show with him when he investigated the Irvington murder house where Holmes murdered the little boy, the Peitzel boy, the son of his partner.
It was Howard,
that he later murdered in Philadelphia. Yeah. I was a little reluctant, David. Zach has he's a very successful TV star here in America. They've been on for 8 years. He lives here in Las Vegas with me. He drives around in Lamborghinis. He's very successful.
Yeah.
And, the young ladies love him here in America. He's quite the movie star. And so I didn't know how it would go. And then I was also having people call me up and say, be very careful working with Zach. You never know what's going to come up on the show. Well, I decided to go ahead with it. And, I got to tell you this. Zach was a complete professional. He was a joy to work with. He took all of my theories and opinions. He used them to the utmost, and the promises that he made me, David, he kept every one of them. So all of those rumors that I'd heard about Zach, I can tell you now on your show, are totally untrue.
I must say, I've not heard anything bad about him. I mean, you do hear that some of those shows are exaggerated and things like that, but that's as far as... I mean, we've got shows over here, they say the same thing about it, like Most Haunted and things like that. But the thing is, when you see those shows, you're just seeing... If there's like a 7-hour investigation, you're seeing it all compacted down into 1 hour, or even 45 minutes. So everything looks like it's all happening within that time. So that's kind of the way I see it. I mean, a lot of the time, you're normally just sitting around doing nothing, aren't you, on these investigations?
That's pretty much what it was. I would have liked to have been a bigger part of the paranormal investigation that took place on the show. But you know, they have their ideas, they have their reasons. And the part that I was involved in, I can tell you this, that description I gave the television audience about the pressure I was feeling in my chest while close to the furnace where the murder took place was absolutely true. It wasn't exaggerated one iota. And it was the same feeling that I had in the murder castle basement when I went down that first time into... I'll tell your audience now where the murder castle used to be is now a United States post office.
Yes.
Okay, it was purchased in 1937 by the federal government, and they tore the murder castle down, which is quite strange to tell you the truth, because they knew what it was. They knew murders had been committed there. They knew they were obligated by federal law to investigate those murders. Instead, they wanted that piece of land because of the rail lines all close to it. And they tore the murder castle down. They filled in the hole that was once the basement, and they built the post office over the top of it. So when you go down into the basement of the post office today, which is still in operation, Dave, there are some of the original Holmes tunnels still in the basement. And I've been up in those tunnels. And those tunnels were designed by Holmes so that if the police ever came in the front door of the hotel, he could escape out the tunnel across the street. He never had to use them. But they're still there. So obviously someone at the post office thought they would be handy one day. I don't know why. So when we went down into that basement, and I write about it at chapter 27 of my book, when we went down into that basement, I didn't believe in the paranormal, David. I didn't believe in life after death. I didn't believe in the spirit world. Quite frankly, I didn't believe in God. When I came back up those steps, I believed in all of them. And I tried to describe that in my book to my readers. And, you know, it's a difficult description for any author to attempt. Because, you know, I'm trying to describe the emotion, the voices, the visions I was having. It's almost like, you know the movie Contact with Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
It's almost like her trying to describe to that congressional hearing how she fell through the time machine. It's impossible to do. But I can tell you this. I didn't lie about that experience I had in that basement. I know that as a human being myself talking to you today. And I hope there are other people in the world who've had those same experiences. Because I think one day we're going to make an amazing discovery about that energy, that existence, that thing that happens after death.
Oh, definitely.
And I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. The funny thing is, you sort of just killed all that off. I was about to ask you what all your own beliefs and things are in the paranormal, but you just covered all that anyway. I was going to ask you if you believe in ghosts and everything like that. But
yeah, I'm a firm believer. And I can tell you, I was the one who thought anyone that believed in the paranormal before was crazy.
So apart from that one with Zach, you did another one with Haunted History, was it? Or was that the same thing?
Oh no, Haunted History was a great show. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that team, we received permission from the post office to go down into the basement. They filmed me, audio and a visual team behind me, going through the basement up into the tunnel. And
that was that.
They
right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, and they replay it once in a while, David. If any of your listeners want to watch it, it's called Haunted History H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, I wonder if that's it may be on YouTube or something, but I'm sure it will be around somewhere.
Oh yeah, it'll be, like I say, if you pull up Haunted History H.H. Holmes, you'll pick it up.
Yeah.
And it actually films me walking through that basement. And I'll give you an interesting, sidebar. About 2 weeks ago, David, we were in Chicago and we decided to visit the castle again. We've been requesting the federal government for permission to excavate the grounds to see what's actually there in that old basement, all right? And of course they've been refusing us.
Yeah. And
they'll probably refuse us for years to come until we get enough financial backing behind us so we can force the issue.
Yeah, I know you've had quite a struggle with that. I have been following that.
I knew it would be a struggle. It's anytime you're dealing with the United States federal government, you're in for a struggle. So I was outside the post office grounds, and we were measuring off the old foundation based on the dimensions the police department had stated were the murder castle. And the original custodian, who'd gone down into the basement with me the first time, drove up and got out of his car and said, "Hey, Jeff, how are you?" All the introductions. And he said, "I've got some things to tell you." And I said, "Well, I'm all ears. Tell me." And he said, "Well, you notice how the federal government and the post office was refusing anyone entry into the basement any longer. They'd refused ghost adventurers. They refused ghost hunters. They refused American Ripper, a team down into the basement." He said, "Well, they've barricaded the door to the stairway down into the basement. They've refused entry of even the employees at the post office. And, David, check this out. I know your listeners, they're going to come up with that old X-Files thought in their head. The federal government has had 2 investigatory teams of their own down into the basement to see what they can find is down there."
But no answers yet.
Well, I'm going to submit an FOIA request. In America, that's called a Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, I mean, they should come up with what they've found, or even if it's nothing.
Well, and you know what? If I can get their conclusions, maybe nothing, maybe yes, maybe the most amazing discovery in the history of mankind. It might be something that blows the doors off this whole paranormal thing. So I'm quite excited, as you can tell.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Because a lot of that's connected to the post office. It's actually a parking lot, isn't it? Which you've been trying to get dug up for a number of years.
Yeah, there's an overlap. We could actually dig part of the basement up without interrupting the post office operation at all. And this is what I'm trying to explain to the federal government.
Yeah.
I've already got a television network that's willing to fund the excavation.
So do you think that there may, do you think there's a possibility of a follow-up to the American Ripper that you might be able to get involved in?
Well, that's what I'm working on right now. Like I say, I have the financial backing. I have the universities in the Chicago, Illinois area that want to be the anthropologists on this adventure, this investigation. Now I just have to convince the federal government that we'll treat it with respect, that will allow them to view the conclusions before we release them to the public. They always want that over here.
Sure, yeah.
And if we do that, the history demands that they allow it, because what they did, David, buying that property and filling in that basement before they investigated those murders was a violation of the law.
It's unbelievable, really, what they did there, wasn't it? I mean, it makes you think that they might have been covering something up rather than, you know.
Well, I think, they probably thought David Holmes had been tried for murder. He'd been found guilty. He had, quote unquote, been executed, which, if you watched American Ripper, we've proven that he wasn't. And they probably thought all that was, we could let sleeping dogs lie. Let's just put a post office there and get to work.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was anything intentionally evil about it, but they knew that there were laws involved, and they knew they should have investigated those homicides.
Now, can we go into that, where you think he wasn't actually executed at the time?
Yeah, American Ripper involved two of my theories, David. One that he was Jack the Ripper, and one that he wasn't executed, and that the exhumation that we conducted resulted in evidence proving it wasn't him in the grave. History disagreed with me, David. We had arguments about it, which I'm not allowed to talk to you about because of contracts.
Yeah.
The University of Pennsylvania anthropologists also disagreed with me. So you have very professionals disagreeing with me on this subject. I just want to warn your listeners about that. But I'll tell you this. The DNA didn't match mine. No one argues that with me. The skeleton didn't match the police reports how tall H.H. Holmes was when he was arrested. There was no trauma to the neck associated with a fall through a scaffolding and a hanging. The only thing that matched were dental records, David. Dental records that matched the teeth in the skull we pulled up from the grave, all right? But my research team found something very interesting, David. The dental records were supplied by a Chicago dentist who had worked with Holmes falsifying cadavers for life insurance fraud previously.
Oh, well, yeah.
So you can tell, and how my mind works. I'm the one that believes he was Jack the Ripper and thinks I've solved that mystery. You know how my mind works. These pieces of evidence I could take to court, David, and I could show not guilty in an American court of law. And that's why I don't quite know why it went the way it did. I think it has something to do why we never have American Ripper replayed in the United States on History Channel. And hopefully one day someone over there will be responsible about this amazing discovery they made and take another look at it.
I'm surprised actually the History Channel itself doesn't want to. I mean, is somebody telling them not to play it? Or I don't quite understand that really. I guess you don't either.
They'd never share with me that information, David.
No, it's a real shame because it is a fantastic series. But as I say, it's available over here on the box set. So do they not have that type of thing in the States, like where you can get a box set of it?
I think you can buy it off Hulu over here. I think you can. And then, what I tell people, David, is this. The first 7 episodes of an 8-part miniseries, the first 7 are incredible. That last one, when you watch it, of the exhumation, you'll see that it was quite questionable. And it wasn't produced with the same quality that the first 7 were. So, next time if you get a chance, take a look at those final 15 minutes of that last episode where they reach questionable conclusions about the evidence we obtained digging up that grave. And see what you come up with in your own mind.
Yeah, I did actually watch it today, Chet. I've had I've had a big blitz on it today, watching it again, to be honest, knowing I was going to be speaking to you today. I'll have to look at that again. Maybe I missed something there, but I did. There was a feeling of, oh, right, okay then. So it was kind of left in the air with it, like you do with some films at the end. You think, oh, whoa, what's the answer still? You're still not left with an answer. But,
you know what though? I don't want to leave the wrong impression.
Sure.
What history gave to me, David, allowing me to present my theory that Holmes was Jack the Ripper to the entire world was amazing. All right? They went way out on a limb. It took a lot of courage on their part, and I will always be grateful to them for that. It's just that last exhumation, there were so many scientists and professionals who disagreed with what I thought we found. You know, I think history probably did the right thing going the direction they did. I just hope one day, David, they take another look at it with different scientists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you say, they did put it together. It was very well put together, the show itself, like from the Jack the Ripper point of view and from H.H. Holmes' point of view. By the way, H.H. Holmes was only one of his names, wasn't it? He had several fake identities, if you want to call them that.
My research team has come up with 31 so far, David.
31, wow, I didn't realise there was that many. Wow. Because obviously your name's Mudgett, his name was Mudgett also. I think a lot of people, I've heard some confusion about why is he H.H. Holmes, but your name's Mudgett. But, his name was Herman Mudgett, his real name. But, so in case anyone, to clear that little bit of confusion up.
There's a funny joke that I think Herman played on the world when he was allegedly executed and a substitute cadaver was placed in the grave, in my opinion. There was a pewter cross placed on top of the concrete sarcophagus. When we exhumed the grave, we came across the cross, and it's rather large and it's very ornate. And the interesting background to it was before the hanging, Holmes had converted to Catholicism, confessed his sins, and begged for forgiveness, okay? But on this cross, here's this man who's begged for forgiveness. Instead of his birth name, Herman Webster Mudgett, he made a little chuckle of a joke and put H.H. Holmes on the cross.
Yeah, it's like a final laugh, yeah.
Yeah, it seems questionable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think what you said earlier, I believe that about the path he chose. I think he chose that path because he wanted to be, I don't know, maybe seen as an expert trickster, basically, that he could trick anybody and fool anybody.
Oh, he was a master chess player. I think you're exactly right. When, we're researching now the arrest, the trial, the incarceration, the execution, and the substitution of the grave. And we think, David, he planned this all out beforehand. He played it as a game. He played it as a game of chess and created probably the greatest fraud and escape in the history of American justice.
Yeah. Well, I think you can see that by the show, the documentary show, actually, that the planning that he must have undertaken. I mean, for the castle alone, the layout and everything, the way it was planned.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, another thing that puzzles me about the castle, he must have had quite a few people helping him make it, surely.
Which, when you think about it, how could he have done that without someone going to the authorities?
Well, unless he murdered them as well after they'd done their job, maybe.
Could be. I know he was a master hypnotist. I know he could talk anyone into anything. So, there is some of that, but some of the legend has it that he even refused paying some of these contractors who actually filed suits against him in Chicago. And I think maybe he got so complex he fooled himself sometimes, David.
Yeah. But it makes you wonder why people never asked questions back then when they were designing it and building it and everything for him. But there you go. Anyway, Jeff, it's been fascinating. Thank you very much for... how can people get in touch with you anyway? And I imagine your book is available on Amazon for anyone that's interested out there.
Yeah, on Amazon, and I'm hoping one day that I have an English publisher contact me so that we can place some print copies in the UK, because I've got quite a few fans in the UK, and we have a lot of contacts from the UK on my Facebook page, the Bloodstains Facebook page.
Yeah.
And any of your listeners are welcome to join there. I try to put any new information we come up with on those pages.
You do. And what I'll do, I've got a Paranormal Dimensions page. I'll put all those links onto it for you, and also the book and everything. And hopefully, maybe one day you'll get back over here. And I'll go to Scotland Yard with you. You can go and question those detectives again.
David, thank you very much. And one of my dreams, David, is to actually take part in maybe an event or a convention where, renowned ripperologists and I go up on stage and talk about my evidence that Ripper was H.H. Holmes in a fair and balanced fashion instead of name calling. That's one of my dreams.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, in my small capacity, I'll see what I'll have a little look into that and see what I can do. Because I have got one or two contacts and things, and you never know, maybe we can get something sorted. But I'm not promising anything, but you never know.
Thank you
I'd love that. I'd love to get you over here, because I think you've got a lot of stories to tell, and I think this is not the end of it yet. I'm sure there's a lot more to come, like you say.
And you know what, David? I appreciate you helping me with the paranormal side, because that is now my greatest goal. I want to be part of that when some team, when an authentic scientific team makes a discovery regarding that. I'd love to be a part of that. And I'll tell you this, it's my belief that if the paranormal is proven, and I'm not the first one to have said this,
sure, yeah.
It will be at 63rd and Wallace in Chicago in that basement. And I'm hoping to convince the federal government to allow us the opportunity to go down there with the world's best paranormal investigating team to see what we can come up with using the best technology in the world also.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with both Holmes and the Jack the Ripper, they've kind of taken on a paranormal realm of their own anyway, haven't they? Although they're not paranormal characters as such, but they've gone into the realm of the paranormal. That's the way I see it anyway. But
I agree with you. I agree with you completely.
But anyway, Jeff, thank you so much for. It's early morning there, isn't it? In Las Vegas, lovely sunny Las Vegas, when we've got pouring with rain here, and it's getting colder. But I don't feel sorry for you at all. But
I tell you what, I've enjoyed our talk. Your show is highly thought of over here, and I can't wait to see how it comes out on YouTube.
Absolutely, thank you. I'll send you the links and everything when it goes out, and as I say, I will put all the links and things on the show page, and I'll send you the links and everything for it, Jeff. And hopefully we'll speak again sometime. And who knows? Maybe you'll get over here one day.
Well, I tell you what, that's my dream. I want to go back to London and discuss ripperology.
Yeah, well, I'll keep in touch with you, and if I can get anything going, or if I find anything that's interesting, that may interest you, I'll certainly get in touch with you about it. And anyway, Jeff, thank you very much again. I don't know what else I can say. Is there anything more you'd like to say to anyone out there?
No, I just, you know what, everyone that takes the time to listen to, my theories, which I understand some have high doubts about, I appreciate your open mind and setting aside preconceived notions and taking a look at the evidence and the facts, because there are things out there which need to be relooked at. Not just this subject, a lot of subjects in life. And I love to be a part of that. And David, it has been a pleasure to be on your show today, and thanks for helping me with that.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Mudgett, thank you very much for coming on, Jeff. And I'll say goodbye to you now, and hopefully speak to you again sometime.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Bye. You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young, and this is the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Please tune in again next week. Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.